The rise of Twitch had a huge impact on the gaming community, and a disproportionate impact on speedrunning in particular. While events like Games Done Quick are huge today, it's easy to forget how niche speedrunning was at the start of the 2010s. On top of the increased audience, the inherent nature of the live streaming platform prioritized showing live progress in what were known as single segment or real-time attack runs. As covered in the previous video, the randomness inherent in the structure of Diablo 2 deterred potential speedrunners from even trying the game, and those who did leaned on segmented style runs to allow themselves multiple attempts on static maps. Was it even possible to do an RTA speedrun? Or would the variability in item drops, monster density, and the chance of simply getting lost instead make it too boring to captivate an audience, like a certain former record holder believed? Follow me into the next phase of Diablo 2 speedrunning, where a small band of entrepreneurs would find a way through the haze of randomness, build an audience, and create the foundations for the modern D2 community.
Yes, Diablo 2 speedruns are a thing.
Yeah, Diablo 2 is indeed the best game of all time.
Oh my god.
Nice! Holy shit, it actually happened.
Oh, mein Intellekt ist kaputt. Das ist scheiße.
Real-time attack, also commonly referred to as RTA or single segment, are speedruns played with the timer running for the full duration for however long it takes from starting the game until it's beaten, and is the format you'll see in the vast majority of demonstrations at events like GDQ. This means there's no do-overs if you have a bad part of a run, dying along the way and needing to recover lost ground. Every repeated step adds to your overall time. Building off this appetite for live stream content, the coordination platform Speedruns Live emerged, allowing users to define specific outcomes in a game, like getting to the end of World 1 in Super Mario or beating the Deku Tree in Ocarina of Time, and awarding points to whoever achieved the goal first, as well as posting a link to each of the race's own live streams. The first hints of RTA being applied to Diablo 2 came from updates from MFB in Fragfrog's 8-man, 100% segmented post on the Speed Demos Archive forum mentioned in the previous video. In the update, he reported that the team they assembled after migrating to the German In Diablo website had managed to beat the game in around 4 hours on a recent ladder reset. But for single-player competition, it was Speedruns Live and a member from a later incarnation of that same German 8-man team that helped bring RTA to single-player Diablo 2. After a bunch of short races in Diablo 2, on the 9th of February 2013, a race from the start to the end of the normal difficulty was held between a German speedrunner by the name of Lav and another occasional streamer, Darken Spirit. With years of experience behind him, Lav won the race and completed the first documented RTA speedrun of Diablo 2 in a time of 2 hours 28 minutes. Unfortunately, no records of this run still exist today, outside of this one statistic. But the race itself seemed to tip Lav over the edge into fully embracing an idea he'd already been considering, and only 1 week later, he would complete a run he'd take back to the SDA community, truly laying the foundations of modern D2 speedrunning with a time even better than that of the original segmented run from Marshmallow. 1 hour, 51 minutes, and 53 seconds. Despite its share of mistakes and missing a few of the micro-optimizations from Fragfrog's run, by keeping the core of farming the counters for stealth and leaf runes, as well as generally navigating well, he managed to kick off the category with a time that even today would be a respectable first appearance on the leaderboards. But with no use of map hack, and without the ability to scout ahead like in segmented runs, it seems natural to ask, how could he get such a time without getting lost in the randomness of Diablo 2 map generation? Luckily for Lav, and the whole Diablo 2 community, there was more to Diablo maps than first meets the eye, and things are less random than they seem. Even in the earliest days of Diablo 2 speedruns, when Marshmallow was first planning out his assassin runs, there were mentions of tips in navigating maps. And in fact, as early as 2003, there'd been a detailed write-up at the Amazon basin fleshing out the details on some curious facts about less than random relationships in specific areas. Roughly a fifth of all the areas in the game are generated with fixed dynamics that give hints on how to best navigate these otherwise daunting areas. Key to this is the game engine's use of tiles in map creation. Each procedurally generated map is made of individually crafted tile set pieces, which are then laid out in a dominoes-like fashion, where pieces need to appropriately fit each other. A map will roll a number of tiles within a range to be included in its layout, and then insert entrances, exits, and other specific features as need be. Key to the ability to read maps is the fact that there are specific relationships between these features defined in the core of the game's code. This means that once you know one of these features, commonly an entrance but occasionally something like a waypoint or a golden chest, you get a huge hint on where the exit will be and where you need to run. Speedrunners tend to talk about this in terms of a left turn, right turn, or straight through map, and the easiest way to explain it is with a few examples from Act 1. To try and keep things clean here, I'm going to separate direction into two categories. One is cardinal direction for how the overworld map is laid out, using words like on a compass: north, east, south, and west. The other is relative direction for the way the character's player needs to move, using words like left, right, straight, and back. The key thing to remember is that map generation is never determined based on cardinal directions, but always relative to the back wall of feature tiles. If we start with the most basic premise of the rogue encampment, where you first start the game, the map can generate exits to the northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest. But regardless, a relative direction will always be the same. Here, I've used blue lines for straight, green lines for left, and red lines for right. One of the most prolific areas for map reading in general online play is the Forgotten Tower, where players run to the bottom to kill the Countess for runes. Levels 1 through 4 are always left turn maps. When you exit the entrance tile, if you deleted every other tile on the map except for one, you'd need to make a left turn in order to go to the tile exiting the map, like you see here. This isn't a perfect guarantee of knowing where to run, as sometimes the game will mess with you, wrapping 3 right turns around so your exit tile is on the right hand side, or even behind relative to the entrance. Another one of the earliest readable maps in the game is the underground passage cave area. Entrance and exit tiles are always paired in this area to be straight through, which means if you took away every other tile in the area, you can just run straight from the entrance tile into the exit tile. The reason this area is a great example is that to new players it isn't immediately obvious how big a tile is, since they vary by area, and on a tile like this, you might first think that you need to keep running southwest, but the tile itself exits toward the northeast. The straight through direction only applies to the exit point of the tile. For a more detailed explanation of map navigation, check out the links in the description for the video. Knowing these tricks for each area, a runner could take randomness by the horns and turn what was previously an impediment into a display of skill, and add a sense of dramatic tension that was missing from the previous segmented runs. To get back to the records, a couple of days after completing the run, Lav shared his results with the SDA forums. While it seemed that the old crew had moved on, Wymank, MFB, and Fragfrog all appeared within a few hours, commending Lav's efforts, providing hints and tips, and even making suggestions for how to complete a faster run using the Sorceress. However, despite some experimentation from this group, the real-time attack category didn't exactly get much attention at this point. There were a few streamers on Twitch playing Diablo 2, but they were either playing for fun on Battle.net or playing to create new speedrunning categories on other classes or even in the non-expansion version of the game. 3 months later,
Not much up. Just breaking my record.
Lav managed to best his own record, with improvements across a range of factors, but it mostly boiled down to 2 things. First, in his original world record he'd over-leveled. When he defeated the Ancients in that original run, he was already level 21, meaning he'd spent too long killing monsters. And secondly, in the middle of the run, he came across a skill shrine. Since these actually regenerate every 5 minutes, he'd periodically return to get the plus to skills benefit during his fights with Duriel, Mephisto, and Diablo, as Fragfrog had done. The run was still missing a bunch of the micro-optimizations that had been visible in the old segmented runs. but in order to best it, the community had some growing to do. It would take a year for the next prominent speedrunning name to emerge in the Diablo 2 community, but just as Lav stopped, an interesting character by the name of Nightfall started streaming D2 late at night after experimenting with some other speedrunning categories. After a couple of Battle.net streams around the 2014 ladder reset, he decided to give speedrunning a try, and by a stroke of fortune, another runner who'd specialised in seeded runs, Agur, stumbled into his chat and directed him towards the resources that Lav had compiled on running different characters. With plenty of prior experience in the game, Nightfall made progress fairly quickly, although he wasn't making it easy for himself being a dedicated hardcore player. Any death meant permadeath, and he'd have to start a run completely anew, all the way from level 1. After a few weeks practice, on the 9th of June 2014, Nightfall did this.
Holy shit.
Probably the biggest difference between this and Lav's run was a shift in strategy. He invested more points in burst of speed, going from 1 point in Lav's run to 5 points this time. Each point in this skill gives roughly an extra 3% faster run speed. Adding the inability to exploit shrines together with not knowing exactly where to run meant that the extra investment in a speed boost was worth the sacrifice to damage. Nightfall also had far better luck in his rune drops from the Countess, where he only needed to repeat the Forgotten Tower 4 times compared to Lav's previous 7.
Nice. Holy shit, it actually happened.
On top of this, there were some other micro-optimizations that were particularly notable. Nightfall switched over to the strategy previously demonstrated by Fragfrog of replacing his starting weapon with a dagger, enabling him to throw traps faster. This was a case of independent innovation. Despite Fragfrog having displayed the benefits of this technique years earlier, Nightfall still had never heard of it. He was also first to use a strategy that almost always raises questions from new D2 fans the first time they watch a stream. He dropped the default shield as soon as possible after starting the game. In the early game, having extra defense doesn't really help your character, as defense is set to 0 in the background code whenever your character's running. Not to mention, using a shield to block quickly becomes a liability as you waste time cordon block animations and can even end up surrounded by enemy packs as a result of stun locking that you otherwise would have avoided. He also avoided wasting time on an optional quest previously completed by Lav. The Jade Figurine quest gives a permanent increase of 20 life to her character, but despite playing hardcore, Nightfall was willing to sacrifice safety for speed, a trend that would continue in future records. Nightfall would go on to set a bunch of world records across a lot of the emerging categories in the Diablo 2 scene, but it would take another 5 months before he beat his own time, improving the record to 1 hour, 40 minutes and 22 seconds on the 27th of November.
Oh my god. This was the last thing I was expecting tonight. Holy shit. Pretty nice.
On top of just better gameplay overall and tweaking the balance between burst of speed and fire blast to boost his damage output, this run was blessed with a few good maps and high monster density, allowing Nightfall to progress quickly both physically through the map and in accumulating enough experience, actually ending up significantly over-leveled at the end of the run. Nightfall's continued cultivation of interest in Diablo 2 streaming began to pay off, and January 2015 would see the emergence of a new runner who would dominate the leaderboards throughout 2015, a man known to Twitch as Teo1904.
Yes! Yes! Oh.
Pascal Teo Fischer made his debut to Diablo 2 speedrunning in early 2015 with a bang, tackling Psycho's old 100% record and beating it by almost 2 hours, managing to complete all quests on all difficulties in the game using the Sorceress in 2 hours 43 minutes. After submitting this run, he began to stream extended Diablo 2 streams almost every day on Twitch, putting his previously honed skills to the test in taking on Nightfall's world records. Within a week of beginning his attack on the Diablo 2 RTA leaderboards, Teo beat Nightfall's previous record for fastest players won Baal kill with a time of 1:36.58 on the assassin. Coming from the background of optimized play through segmentation, Teo brought back the relentless focus on almost exclusively targeting unique mobs for experience, spending far less time killing regular monster packs than either Lav or Nightfall had previously done. It also picked up on another key optimization that was known to other runners, but that they'd really seemed to struggle with on the assassin, using Fire Blast in between casts of Wake of Fire. Wake of Fire is a tremendously powerful area of effect skill unlocked by the assassin at level 12. It looks cool and is a beast for dealing damage to packs of monsters in the game. However, to limit its excessive stopping power, the game has a next hit delay coded into the skill, which limits the benefit of laying multiple Wake of Fire traps to attack a single enemy. This is most prominent at the end of act bosses. To overcome this, the optimal strategy is to place only 2 to 3 Wake of Fire traps and then throw a few extra fire blasts, which are not impacted by the next hit delay, and then repeat. Another fun exploit was the use of death strats. By playing soft core, he was able to lure the final waves of mini-bosses out of the Throne of Destruction and let himself be killed, allowing an instant teleport back to the throne room and triggering the game to act as if these waves had actually been defeated. While Nightfall and Lav had used a similar luring strategy, they'd not used the death exploit and instead spent extra time running through the side corridors in order to trap the waves. An additional, extremely subtle advantage of softcore over hardcore was the ability to take a riskier approach on the types of potions used. While Nightfall had always ensured he had a row of rejuvenating potions in his belt, which refill health instantly rather than over time, this meant he was slower in restocking on potions from vendors using the belt trick, and Teo had no such concerns. This was somewhat offset by spending time casting town portals and activating waypoints just in case he died, but on net it did provide a slight time advantage. But there were still clear improvements to be made on the run. Coming straight from the segmented category, Teo didn't really know his maps very well, particularly Act 2, and he had some bad luck in trying to find the spider cabin in Act 3.
Should have seen that coming.
So within 2 days, Nightfall would come back and retake the top spot, once again in hardcore with a time of 1:34.39.
Holy motherfucking hell. We did it, Rude! We got it! Sub 135, man!
No more.
And I thought tonight was failure after failure.
He'd picked up a lot of the attacking strategy from Teo and had some great shrine luck early in the game, with experience shrines boosting his level very quickly and skill shrines helping take down bosses. But it wouldn't last. Just 5 days later on the 9th of February, Teo would pull off something absolutely crazy.
Ah! Woo! Wow. Holy shit.
Taking 10% off the world record within a couple of weeks of competing in real-time attack, this run was something to behold. Building off his more effective playstyle, over the course of a week Teo had drastically improved his map reading abilities, and this alone probably would have gotten him the record. But RNG was truly on Teo's side this day. First up, at the start of the run, he had near continuous experience shrines, almost a mirror of what Fragfrog had achieved in the segmented run. And equally important, his maps were almost all extremely fast. I've said this a couple of times now, so I guess it's time to expand on map luck in Diablo 2. I covered earlier that by taking hints from tiles, runners are able to mitigate some of the randomness from Diablo 2 layouts in order to know where to run. But there are 2 key places where randomness still has a role. First of all, areas with no readable attributes. The main areas where this plays a role for speedrunners are Catacombs level 1 and 3, Worldstone Keep level 1 and 3, and perhaps most famous of all, the Arcane Sanctuary. To expand, the The Arcane Sanctuary is an area in Act 2 of the game with 4 paths leading off in orthogonal directions from a central point. At the end of one of these paths is a mini-boss called the Summoner, as well as a portal to the next section you need to go to progress in the game. Since the layouts are seemingly perfectly randomized, with a 25% chance the exit is in any given direction, there's no way for runners to know which direction to run in order to keep progressing. There are some nuances to which way is best for each class to go due to different attributes on the path, the path with portals being good for an underleveled sorceress with telekinesis, the one having straight planes good for characters with high single target damage, and the 2 having stairs which are good for nothing. Running to explore each path takes around 1 to 2 minutes, and with minimal benefits to experience gained, the best case for a speedrunner is to get lucky and get a first way exit. On Teo's run, not only did he get a first way, he got the fastest possible first way, coming off the straight plains path. He also managed to find the exits very quickly in both the Catacombs and Worldstone Keep. The other main effect of map lock is how closely together map features are placed. For example, in the tower you could get an extremely efficient map layout where the exit tile is right next to the entrance, or you can get a much longer layout where you have to spend a lot of extra time covering ground just to get to the next level. These effects permeate the entire game, but the biggest impacts on a runner's time seem to come from the Act 2 deserts and Act 3 jungles. In fact, Act 3 jungle maps have an extra quirk where the right feature placements can let you skip an entire area, saving huge amounts of time in what is commonly called a marsh skip. While not perfect, Teo's run was on the better side of average in these layouts, getting great waypoint placement next to the tower in Act 1, middle of the road deserts in Act 2, and a marsh skip in Act 3. The run was huge, the luck was enormous, and without some significant changes to strategies, or a bunch of new micro-optimizations, it was hard to see how the assassin could go faster than 125. So that was where the assassin record stood, for over 3 years. But with a new cohort of streamers like Mr. Llama SC and Ryo Quetzalcoatl joining the scene on top of the existing crew, the revitalized flow of ideas and strategy improvements would come to return the true fastest character in Diablo 2 to the throne. So join us next time when we explore the speed of the sorceress. Just to clarify for these tombs ones in Act 2, since the entrance tile seems to have 3 exits, just imagine the entrance tile is smushed into the intersection, leaving only the back wall. That gets you your left turn. Alright, thanks.